it says that the president should never forget this. That he has not risen above us, but is merely one of us. Chosen by ballot, dismissed after his term, tasked not to transform and work his will upon us, but to bear the weight of decision and to carry out faithfully the design laid in the Constitution and impassioned by the Declaration of Independence. The presidency must adhere to its definition as expressed in the Constitution and to conduct itself the conduct that is defined over time and tradition. While the powers of the office have enlarged with those of the legislature and the judiciary, the framework of the government was actually intended to restrict abuses common to classical empires and the regal states of the 18th century. Without proper adherence to the role contemplated in the Constitution for the presidency, the checks and balances of the constitutional plan become weakened. This has been most obvious in recent years, when the three branches of government have been subject to the tutelage of a single party. Under either party, presidents have often forgotten that they are intended to restrain Congress at times, and that the Congress is independent of their desires. And thus, fused in some unity, the political class has raged forward, an expansion of powers and prerogatives, mistakenly assuming that to exercise power is by default to do good. Even the simplest among us knows that this is not so. Power is an instrument of fatal consequence. It is confined no more readily than quicksilver. It escapes good intentions as easily as air flows through mesh. Therefore, those who are entrusted with it must educate themselves in self-restraint. A republic, if you can keep it, is about limitation. And for good reason. Because we are mortal, and our actions are imperfect. The tragedy of presidential decision is that even with the best choice, some, perhaps many, will be left behind. And some, perhaps many, could die. Because of this truth, the true statesman lives continuously with what Churchill calls stress of soul. He may give to Paul, but only because he robs Peter. And that is why you must always be wary of a president who seems to float on his own greatness. For all greatness is tempered by mortality. Every soul is equal. Distinctions among men cannot be owned. They are on loan from God, who takes them back and evens the accounts in the end. It's a tragedy indeed that new generations taking office attribute failures in governance to insufficient power and seek more of it. In the judiciary, this has seldom been better expressed than by Justice Thurgood Marshall's dictum that you do what you think is right and let the law catch up. In the Congress, it presents itself in massive legislation, acts and codes, thousands of pages long and so monstrously overcomplicated that no human being can read through them in a lifetime, much less understand them, much less apply them justly to a people that increasingly feel that they are no longer being asked, they're being told. Our nation finds itself in the position of a dog, whose duty is not to ask why, because the why is too elevated for his nature, simply to obey. But America is not a dog, and does not require a because I said so jurisprudence, to which it is then commanded to catch up, or legislators who knit laws of such insulting complexity that they are heavier than chains. for a president who acts like, speaks like, and is received as a king.